Hi, I'm Bobby Halton for Fire Engineering, and thanks for tuning in for this week's George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior tutorial. I guess we're kind of visiting about that. But first, our FDIC update. Hey, spaces are filling up fast in all the hands-on training classes. I know a lot of them are sold out, but we still have space available in some of the alternative days. So our registration people will work with you and get you in where you want to get into. And thank you for what an overwhelming response. Going to be absolutely great. Workshop spaces are still available, and there is a plethora, there's our word for the day, plethora of spaces available in the workshops where you can do everything from learning from the experiences of others, sitting down talking about aggressive fire tactics, talking about the results from last year's NIST-UL study at FDIC. Dan Majikowski and the guys are going to go over some of that stuff. So a chance to really sit down and pick the brains of the greatest fire service instructors and innovators that are out there. Everybody from Steve Kerber, Gavin Horn, Denise Smith, who are doing an incredible workshop on the cardiovascular and carcinogen risks on the fire ground and the study that they're doing out at the Illinois Fire Institute. Really neat stuff. IFSI has a great class there on modern fire behavior class that they're doing, which is outstanding. Brian Kazmarek and team are putting that one on. So the workshops are amazing. Really, really, really recommend you take a hard look at the workshops and hands-on training. We have a few slots left available, so take advantage of that. Please sign up for the fun run. I'd love to run with you. I've challenged Chief Lasky, and he's taken me up on it. So Rick will be walking with he told me he's going to have 200 people walking with him. So send this video to Rick and remind him that Bobby said that he promised me he's going to walk with 200 people. And not to be outdone, Chief Goldfeder said he's going to bring 300 people to the fun run. So I'm lying. I'm making a joke. They didn't say they'd bring those many people, but please give them a hard time. Reach out to them. Challenge somebody you know to come walk with you or run with you. You don't have to run. You can walk, and that's the first step. If we're gonna really talk about doing something, let's do something and move towards wellness and health. And so challenge somebody to do the 5K or challenge them to do the stair climb if they're in better shape or whatever. But don't forget, the stair climb is going to be on Friday. It's the NFFF. It's critically important. It's the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb. This is going to be the 15th anniversary of that tragedy this year. So we promise never to forget. Let's prove it. So join us at those great events. Don't forget Stop, Drop, Rock and Roll, the Fool's Bash, and the Union Party. All kinds of great stuff going on. Let's get to our good friend George Washington while we're chewing up the clock here. This one's amazing, and I wish I could show you the actual words because it's really just amazing. Maybe the editor can put them on the bottom for you. But this rule number 8 says, at play and at fire, it is good manners to give place to the last comer and affect not to speak louder than ordinary. At play and at fire, it is good manners to give place to the last comer and not affect to speak louder than ordinary. It's interesting. At play and at fire. So if we're doing an activity that's recreational or we're doing an activity that's critically dangerous, it's good manners to give place to the last comer. So, in other words, if you're at an activity and someone comes in later on, it's good manners to include them in some meaningful way. In other words, make sure that they're connected in some way to whatever that activity might be. At fire, that might mean engaging them in some meaningful way in terms of rehabbing a crew that's already been engaged, or putting them into a critical role that you hadn't yet filled. But if you had filled all of them, putting them into the rotation as soon as possible, because firefighters are like weeds. If you don't give us a job, we'll pop up someplace else. So that's really good advice and good manners. And it's also interesting, he says, and affect not to speak louder than ordinary. Affect not to speak louder than ordinary. Really interesting stuff. Oftentimes when we're engaged in recreational activities, whether it's, a game of baseball or we're fishing or bowling or doing whatever we do, we oftentimes get a bit excited. And so good manners says to try to always moderate yourself a little bit so that you don't end up being overly loud, for lack of a better word. And when we talk about being at a fire, sometimes how we behave, we can convey that down lead to the other firefighters. So if we get excited, the other firefighters are going to get excited. If we get loud, the other firefighters are going to get loud. So if we're on the radio and we're screaming into the radio, what does that do emotionally to everyone else downstream? Or as they say in dog handling, down lead. Everything goes down the lead to the animal. Quick example there, if you ever been to a deal where there's a bad guy in a building and the cops have the building surrounded and an old dog handler comes and he gets the dog out of the car, and he says, hey, hang on a second, let me get Fido. And he goes back and gets Fido. Fido gets out of the car, woof. That dog's going to go in and find the bad guy. You get a young dog handler, maybe a little less experienced, says, hey, what do you got? There's a bad guy. The cops telling me they got a bad guy in the building. That guy runs back to the car all excited. Hey, let me get my dog. He gets the dog. The dog's, oh! That dog will bite you. So that's called down lead. We transmit our emotions to the folks we're around. And when we get loud, people pick up on that. So speak not louder than necessary, which is some great advice. Hey, I hope I'll see you in, I think it's about 3-4 weeks now. That's like 32, 33 days. I go out kind of early, so it's always hard for me to judge when the rest of you are going to get there. If you're coming to FDIC, please come find me. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you. I always love meeting new folks. If it's your first time, tell me what the experience was like and what we could do better. I'm always up for a cup of coffee. I'm always up for a conversation. If you don't mind stopping me and if you don't mind lending me a little bit of your time. Remember our good friend George Washington? We'll be back next week with rule number 9, and we'll see what the good president has for us to say then. And hopefully everything's going well for you in your world and with you and your families. And please, while you're on duty, please be careful out there.